Welcome to The Air is Free, the podcast that helps you stop gripping what you can't control and start embracing what you can. Join Frida Karsberg and me, Sue Willoughby, as we dive into real conversations about resilience, personal freedom, and finding your center in a chaotic world. Inspired by the Swedish expression Luften är fri, which means the air is free, this show is about letting go, trusting the process, and remembering that some things in life were meant to be free and limitless. So take a deep breath, let go of what's weighing you down, and let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to the very first actual episode of The Air is Free. This show is about letting go, trusting the process, and remembering that some things in life are meant to be free and limitless, like air, space, and personal growth. So let's take a deep breath, let go of what's weighing you down, and let's get into it. Hey, Frida, how are you today?
Hi, Sue. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. Thank you so much for wanting to be part of this project. And actually, it's kind of your brainchild. You're the one that came up with the air is free scenario.
Thank you, Sue. Well, I wouldn't have done it without you. We were having one of our conversations as usual, and I'm like, why don't we do Luften är fri? That's awesome. And you were like, yay. So I'm super happy that we get to do this together.
Yeah, I think it's great. And as coaches, we do deal with people trying to, find space, what to do, what not to do, and all that kind of stuff. So the way that we talked about the podcast going is we're going to do it in seasons. So this is our first season. And in this first season, we're going to break it down into topics. So for this first topic chunk, right, we're going to be talking about things that you can control and things that you can't control and how all of that works, right? Because I do think we spend a lot of time trying to control things that we have no control over. Politics aside.
Yeah, let's.
Woo, okay, because that could be like, yeah, okay, we won't even go there. So,
But that's a good example of big things that we, might be out of our control, right? We
yeah,
can have opinions, but then maybe we should just realize that we have to let some stuff go.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about what we can control versus what we can't control. So in the intro, I mentioned, ask the question, right? Have you ever spent way too much time and energy trying to control something only to feel drained and just spent because of all the energy that you've put out there? So I'm going to start asking you that question.
Okay, sure. Well, I mean, what is not about trying to control, right? I think ever since growing up, I've been some kind of a control freak, and I think I still am. But what I've learned these last couple of years is that I can't control everything, how hard I try. I can make lists of everything and I can try to do check marks but it's at the end of the day, 90% of that energy is just useless, and I'm going to feel drained, upset, angry, and tired. So I'm just trying to make a really big shift in my life, not, well, accepting that I can't control everything, I guess.
So what are some of the things that you can control? So let's say, I don't know, tell me a little bit more about that. So that's about, trying to create structure so that gives you more control, right?
Yeah, and I think, I love structure. It's important in my life to be able to live, basically. But what I think is when I start to go down that spiral, like, why did he say that? Why did she do that? I should have done this, blah, blah, blah. All that things that takes up so much time instead of just being like, okay, I did my best. I played my part. That's the end of it. But it can be anything from, okay, I'm going to sound weird, but grocery shopping to, making big life decisions.
So you mean creating structure around both of those things, or those are things that you can control, like grocery shopping?
Yeah.
Give me a couple examples.
No, but what I mean is I have days, okay? So I can have a day when I wake up and maybe I woke up on the wrong side and I feel like I have to be in control of everything, like every tiny little aspect. That would give me like, okay, there's something that is not going great inside of you. But usually, if I don't take my time and think about it, I go on like a machine and I do like all these like structures and telling people what to do. And like, this has to be like exactly as I thought about it in my mind. Okay, where am I going with this? Yeah, so with the grocery shopping, for example, I can be super upset if it's one of those days, right? When I cannot find exactly everything I need for making whatever. You know, on a good day, I'm just gonna like, okay, I couldn't find the eggs, it's fine, I'm gonna make something else. So I guess that's a big metaphor of life in general, don't you think?
It is, and that's interesting. So for me, I have over the years discovered, the things that I can control
Mm.
are how I feel and how I present myself and what I say to people. But the thing that I can't control is how they're going to react to what I say and what I do. And you mentioned something about, well, maybe if I had said it this way, then that, how that person, like it's, when you're younger or something, or you're like, you meet someone that you like, and you send them a text and then you don't hear back from them. And you're like, well, oh my God, why aren't they responding? Blah, 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 blah. It probably has nothing to do with you. It's the fact that, oh, by the way, they have their own life, right? And so I find that I used to spend a lot of time worrying about, how people were reacting to me. Did I say the right thing? And you mentioned this as well. Did I say something wrong? Did I act inappropriately? And all you can do is just be yourself and put yourself out there in a way that is true to you. And how somebody is going to respond to you, you have no control over.
Yeah, that's all right. But hey, so when you are talking like this, it sounds so easy to just, decide that, okay, I'm not gonna care. I'm just gonna be myself out there and, whatever. Is it that easy?
No. It's absolutely not easy. And and do I still worry and do I still care? Yes. And I think that that kind of comes back to me taking a minute before I respond or before I put a thought out there or before I say something to someone. Um, when it leaves me, that's when I lose control of it, right? I can only control what comes out of me. Once it's out there in the universe, then I don't, it's like making a post on Instagram or something. People are going to resonate with it however they're going to resonate with it. They're either going to like it or they're going to troll you and they're going to be whatever. I can't control that. I can't worry about that. And, getting a bad review or having somebody come back with a snarky response, that's another thing. Okay. So then they are putting their feelings out there. You're receiving them. So you control how you receive something as well. Right. So then you're on the receiving end. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, it totally makes sense. I'm just, it's so tricky to get to that point when you feel like you can let things go. You understand that it's someone else's
Mhm.
feelings or emotions. And, I'm battling that still like every day to understand like what is mine and what is theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we do this a lot with our clients, and I know that when we, and I will start out by bringing horses into it and how they process information,
Hmm.
right? The reason that we are both equus coaches and we use horses in our coaching process, is because they cycle through information very differently than we do as humans. And I think that we can learn a lot by how they do that. And, I would love it if you could speak to how horses process information and why they process it the way they do.
Okay, you might have to help me here, so if I forget something. But Okay, so the cool thing with horses and how they process things is they receive and then they process and then they let go. And it's never like the other way around or a different cycle, or it never gets stuck. It's just like a flow that they're, and you can see that in the way they use their body, right? So for us as coaches, that's equus coaches, that is how we learn how to interpret their information. We're looking for signs from the horses and their body language, and that's how we know that it's like going through that cycle that we're looking for.
So why do you think horses process information so easily?
That's a big question. No, but I think the honest answer to that question is because they live in the present moment and they make sure that they are safe for
Yeah.
themselves. So yeah, that's the very quick response to that question. What do you think, Sue?
Well, I think it's because, as you said, they want to know if they're safe or not because they are prey animals.
Hmm.
So, as prey animals in the wild, even though they're 1,200 pounds or whatever, they are still constantly taking in information, whether it's through all of their senses. And I think that that's the key, where they're not just in their head. Right? They're in their body, they're in the moment, as you mentioned, and they're taking all this information in because their way of processing is am I safe? Is this thing a threat? How am I going to get away from this thing if I do feel that it's a threat? What are my other herd members doing? Are they still eating grass and I'm the only one freaking out about something?
Yeah,
Right? And then they're like, "Oh, okay. You know, I I feel nervous. Okay, why do I feel nervous? Okay." And then they let go of it. And then they're like, "Okay, no threat. The threat has passed. I'm going to go back to eating.
yeah.
Return to grazing or whatever they were doing." Um, my horse had a weird thing. I was standing in the round pen with him and two other people, and all of a sudden he just like rocked back on and like leaned back on his backside. He didn't sit down or anything like that, and then he just slowly like snorted and backed away from all of us. It was the weirdest thing. I have no idea what he was processing. It was kind of windy out, so he may have heard something, he may have sensed something, but he was just like backed off. And then all of a sudden he's like, I'm fine. So it was really interesting to watch his body language do that. And as humans, we don't. We get things stuck.
Mm. Yeah, that's the worst.
Yeah. And then they get stuck in our head because we're not in our bodies, we're not in the present moment, and we get stuck in it. And that loop is not a flow through, it is a loop, and it gets stuck and replayed and replayed and replayed and replayed. And then it spins out of control and creates some goofy story that we don't, and then if we do not let it go, but we tuck that story away, guess what? It sits in the story repository, and we'll pull it out when it's convenient and create that loop all over again.
Yeah. I know it's so crazy how we can make those stories, from nothing, and then it just builds up to something big instead of just like processing and letting it go. And I just want to mention, as a Reiki practitioner too, the cool thing about putting away emotions and keeping it inside your body where you feel it's a safe, secret space. What happens when I'm with a client, I can feel those blocks in different parts of your body. And what I'm doing, then I'm just helping to get the flow going more, make it more easier to, let go and release the feelings and emotions. So it's kind of like walks hand in hand with the horses.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that you're, creating like, oh, here's a roadblock. Let's get that out of the way, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever I think we all have certain stories, and once again you said to me that, yeah, oh, you make it sound so easy. Well, yes, it's not easy. And we've both stated that it's not easy. So if I make it sound easy, or if you, Frida, make it sound easy, it's not. Um, it's a skill that we need to learn and that we need to develop
Mm.
as a building block to be able to, find some calm and some centering energy in when situations are stressful, whether they be global situations or whether they just be, intimate situations. So I would love it if you could. Do you have a tool, or do you have a method in so that people can understand a little bit better about how to determine if it's something I can control or something I can't control, and how to let that go?
Great question. Well, there's so many ways of doing that, but I was thinking about something when you were talking too, and lately I've been thinking a lot about us humans and how we want to do things at a certain way, or like everyone else is doing it, right? And I think that can also make blocks in situations with control, because it's like, for example, you want to manifest something or do something, and it feels like, okay, I have to do A, B, and C to get to the goal. And some days you forget about B, and then you can get very upset and like, I have to restart all over again, and like, instead of finding your own flow in things. So I think for me, with the control, if I have the time, I like to just sit down and think about, like, feel into my body, and also feel like, is this something that I can do, make a change, or like, can I, make something out of that? And if the answer that comes is yes, then I can't, So just go with your intuition, and don't be scared of listening to your body, if that makes any sense. Instead of, start looping in your head, start doing research or listening to other people. Just be like, okay, what is my body actually telling me? And dare to trust your intuition. Is that a
Okay.
good answer?
Trusting your intuition also sounds like you make it sound so easy.
I
And I
know.
think that is also a really hard thing to do, but we'll get that into that in another episode.
Mhm.
Um, okay, so I heard you say that taking a moment to get out of your head and into your body and have a better understanding of either what the situation is or where you think you are in that situation. Is that what I understand?
Yes, it's right. And also, like, I love to visualize things or write things down. So if it's hard to just, feel it into it, sometimes when what I do when it's big decisions that needs to be made, or I kind of like visualize. I use, those like mind maps we used to do back in the 90s, whenever. I do that sometimes. I kind of like make a dot that's me in the middle, and then I just like write down, or whatever, the things that I have to make a decision if I can control or not. And it makes it easier for me to actually see it in front of me, and then you can cross out whatever is not in your control, and
Ah, I love that. I love
yes,
that.
good exercise.
Putting things on paper, I think, we've gotten away from that, and I
Mhm.
think it's really important to kind of go back to that. Like, is there a way that you can visualize, like you said, yourself as a dot, and then what the things are that you're dealing with, and then determining what you can control and what you can't. And I think a lot of the control will come back to you.
Yes, exactly.
That's
But you
great.
just look at it for a minute and like, oh, that makes sense, right?
Right. I do think that, drawing something out, and it doesn't have to be some, Picasso or anything, like you said, it could be just a little dot and then little bubbles or something. Yeah, I like that. I like that idea a lot. I think that's great.
What about you, Sue? Do you have any good ideas how you can understand what you can control and what you can't?
Um, good question. Um, I like to take a minute and just take a breath, right? If I'm confronted with a situation, or there's a communication that I may potentially be misinterpreting, right? I just have to stop, take a deep breath, and settle into myself and say, is this something that I'm making up about this other person or about this scenario, or is it true? Right? Is what I'm telling myself the truth? or is it something that I have made up? So when you ask yourself, is that true? Is that true? Is that true? If you can't unequivocally say, yes, that is true, that is a fact, then you have to let go of it. And then it's like, that's something that I don't have any control over, because it's not the truth. It's something that I made up, and it's a story that I've created. So that's kind of one of the tools that I pull out of my tool belt.
I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah. So we've got visualization, and we've got asking yourself if that's the truth or not.
Mhm.
Okay?
Yeah.
As a couple of takeaways from this episode. So I think that pretty much sums up in a short little bit things you can control and things you can't control. So I highly encourage you, as Frida said, you do you, figure out a way that you can determine, is this something I can control, or is this not something I can control? And then put it into perspective and act accordingly. What would you like to add to that, Frida?
I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. And Sue and I are here if you have any questions and want to, ask any questions about this. We're happy to help, because in the beginning, it takes a little bit of work and understanding who you are and where you want to go. So we're here for you if you need any help with that.
Absolutely. And our contact information will be in the show notes. And that is the end of episode 1 in season 1. And today's topic was, once again, things you can control and things you can't control. And don't make yourself crazy in the process. Thanks for being here today, Frida. I really appreciate you. And we'll see you next week with a fresh topic.
Thank you, Sue. Take care.
That's it for today's episode of The Air is Free. I hope this conversation gave you something to think about, something to let go of, and maybe even a little more space to breathe. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button, rate and review the podcast, because it helps more people find us and join in the conversation. And if something resonated with you, share it on social media and be sure to tag us. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can follow us on Instagram, hit us up on our websites. Just come, say hi, send us a message, or let us know what topics you'd love to hear more about. Until next time, take a deep breath, let go of what you can't control, and remember, Luften er free.